The lights came on at 04:32. She was already there. Talia Prescott moved through the simulator bay with a clipboard in hand and a wrench tucked behind her waistband. The hangar's metal walls breathed cold air. Fluorescent lights buzzed softly overhead. Row after row of T6 Texan 2 simulation pods waited in silence. She walked the grid, checking each junction, tapping diagnostic panels, eyes scanning screens faster than the loading animations could finish. The building was quiet at this hour. No cadets, no instructors, just her and the machines. She opened pod C03. The calibration report from last night didn't match the input lag she'd recorded manually on the throttle quadrant. She crouched, removed the side panel, ran a short cable into the service port, and watched the debug logs scroll across her monitor, 1 frame off every 12 seconds. Not enough for human error, just enough to build bad habits. She didn't sigh. She didn't mutter. She typed a line of code, rewrote the throttle latency response time, then ran a diagnostic loop twice to confirm. The lag vanished. She logged the adjustment with timecode 0447, initials only. No one would ask. No one ever did. Next, she walked the main control aisle, where server racks blinked in quiet rhythm. The central avionics suite fed into 4 simulator clusters. Each one had its own power demand curves, radar simulation feeds, G-load response profiles. She moved between racks, checking temperature readings, adjusting airflow gates manually when the auto-control lagged behind delta thresholds. A loose vibration sensor on the primary inertial feed had been flagged 3 days in a row. The technician assigned to replace it hadn't. So she did. Her ID card beeped access to the instructor console at 0513. She tested intercom uplink integrity, verified the GPS emulation engine was functioning within margin, and pushed a system update on the firmware that had stalled overnight. She didn't read the changelog. She'd written most of it last month. Behind her, the main hangar doors began to open at 0532. Voices followed. Cadets. 24 of them, still shaking off sleep, laughing too loudly. Most of them didn't look her way. A few slowed when they passed her workstation, seeing the gray jumpsuit, the hair tied back tight, the badge that said, Systems. Then they looked away. Prescott didn't look up. She moved past them to the emergency diagnostics bay. The simulation servers inside buzzed faintly. The radar injection modules were showing data spikes again, false weather fronts blooming across clear skies. It was a glitch she'd seen twice before. The vendor denied it was a bug. The academy didn't notice. She watched the pattern for 45 seconds. It repeated every 6.4 seconds. Random to the untrained eye. Predictable if you knew what to look for. She keyed into the loop, adjusted the interpolation tolerance, and reset the feed. The noise vanished. She left no note. By 06:05, the instructors had arrived, mostly captains and senior NCOs with coffee cups in hand. One of them, a tall man in a Navy windbreaker, nodded at her briefly as he passed. She returned nothing. Someone shouted across the room for Marcus Chen to speed it up. His boots hit the floor running. Talia moved past them all, unnoticed, to the data storage alcove. She swapped out 2 backup drives, copied flight session data, and ran checksum protocols on the previous day's performance logs. One log caught her eye. A power surge at 1641. Not enough to crash a system. Enough to create a memory register skip. She flagged it in the notes. No commentary, no speculation. She copied the log, backed it up to her drive, and resecured the cabinet. At 0622, she returned to pod C03, the same one from earlier. She sat down in the instructor seat. Screen came alive, HUD initialized, control panel synced. She ran a pre-flight sequence on the virtual aircraft landing gear, flaps, elevator trim, fuel valve, engine prime, ignition. Every control input felt right, responsive, clean. She reset the scenario, loaded a weather training module with high crosswinds, watched the AI cadet lose control on final, again and again. She adjusted the turbulence profile by 0.03, then she locked the system and walked away. In the hall outside, cadets were crowding around an instructor going over sortie plans. One of them dropped a notepad. She picked it up, handed it back. He mumbled thanks, didn't meet her eyes. She continued walking. In the corner of the simulator bay, her workstation sat beneath a wall of cooling ducts. A single green mug sat beside the monitor. No name on it. She sat, pulled up a list of maintenance tickets submitted last night. There were none. She closed the list, opened the raw diagnostic feed instead. By 07:00, the building was humming with energy. Radios chirped, doors slammed, flight sim countdowns echoed through the bay. Nobody saw the woman who had cleared every fault line they were about to fly over. She kept her hands on the keyboard. Behind her, the morning briefing started. She didn't turn around. The T6 Texan II lifted off at 09:17. The air was clean. Visibility 12 miles. Winds at 7 knots from the southwest. Talia sat in the front seat, gloved hands light on the stick. Instructor Captain Dennis Ray sat in the rear. They climbed to 5,000 feet. Ray called out headings. She executed them. Left bank to 240. Level. Flaps adjusted. A quick trim. She scanned the sky. Then back to instruments. All steady. Minor turbulence ahead. Nothing serious. Ray told her to simulate engine failure recovery. She nodded once. Reach for the mixture control. Pulled it back. RPM dropped. She entered glide configuration. Calm. Measured. Then the panel flickered. It was quick. A blink. Then the entire multifunction display shut off. The attitude indicator went dead. COM 1 dropped. Stick controls resisted her input. Talia didn't speak. Her eyes scanned quickly. Airspeed dropping. VSI down 1,200 feet per minute. The aircraft yawed slightly left. Wind shear or lateral drift. A tone blared from the warning system. Then a second one. Behind her. Ray's voice cut in. Jagged. Something's wrong. Damn it, I can't get control. She reached up. Reset the avionics master. Nothing. The backup attitude indicator showed nose down, 7 degrees, descent rate increasing. VSI now over 1,800. She keyed the intercom. Sir, I have the aircraft. Ray didn't respond. She felt his hand fighting the stick. I have the aircraft. Let go. Another second of resistance. Then it slackened. She applied back pressure. Slowly. The nose responded. Trim control forward. She leveled the wings, countered yaw with rudder, reduced throttle to 40%, VSI slowing, descent rate easing, COM 2 still offline. She toggled the backup. It clicked alive with static. She tuned to regional ATC. This is training flight November 9208, declaring in-flight emergency, loss of avionics, regaining control. The voice came back clear. Copy November 9208. What's your altitude? She glanced at the altimeter. 3,200 and climbing slowly. Her voice stayed level. Currently at 3,200. Stable. Heading 180. Request vectors to field. ATC issued instructions. She acknowledged. Gently angled the aircraft. Everything mechanical felt sluggish but functional. Behind her, Ray was breathing hard, not speaking. She adjusted trim again, held course, watched engine temps. At 0924, they came over final approach. She dropped flaps. Airspeed held steady. Winds gusted slightly from port. She corrected. No drift. Gear down. 3 green. The T6 touched down clean at 0927. She taxied off the runway, set the brake, shut down systems. Ray said nothing. Talia climbed out, removed her gloves, logged the event time on her kneeboard. She didn't look at him. On the tarmac, Two instructors approached. One asked what happened. She handed over the kneeboard, already annotated with systems loss timeline and recovery steps. No embellishment. They took it without comment. She walked away, not toward debrief, not toward the cadet lounge. She went straight to the maintenance hangar, where she filed the initial failure notice. Under cause, she wrote unknown. Under action taken, she wrote recovered. Time 09:28. Initials T.P. The summons came at 13:45. She reported to Building 228 Administration Wing, Room 312. A desk, a folder, 3 officers. She stood. They sat. Captain Ray wasn't there. Major Delaney read from a prepared statement. Language crisp, tone flat. The investigation had concluded. Talia Prescott had displayed poor judgment during a routine training exercise. She had overstepped authority, violated protocol, demonstrated signs of emotional instability under stress. He didn't look up from the paper. Next to him, a lieutenant handed her a printed report. 6 pages. Her name on the first, redacted phrases. The signature at the bottom wasn't hers. She didn't reach for it. The major continued. Effective immediately, her status in the undergraduate pilot training program was revoked. No appeals, no hearing. The review board had rendered its decision. She was removed from the flight track. Another officer, civilian, cleared his throat. HR liaison. He slid a second folder forward, contained within a reassignment proposal. Systems technician, Flight Operations Division. Same base. Reduced clearance. No flight duties. She opened it, read every line. Nothing flickered in her expression. Delaney asked if she had any questions. She shook her head. The HR rep passed her a pen. Government issue. Black ink. She signed 1358. She stood, saluted. They nodded, not returning it. She left the room. The hallway was empty. Fluorescent lights buzzed. The floor was clean tile, recently waxed. Her boots didn't echo. She walked past the display wall photos of recent graduates, squadron banners, silver wings mounted in glass. Her frame didn't change. Her pace didn't slow. At the exit, she passed 2 cadets entering for a briefing. One glanced at her name tag, didn't recognize it. Outside, the wind had picked up, low clouds moving fast. She stood on the steps for a second, one hand gripping the railing. Then she kept walking. To the barracks. To pack. No one stopped her. No one asked. That night, her name vanished from the flight roster. Her dorm keycard was deactivated. Her simulator access changed from pilot in training to tech-level observer. By morning, a new name appeared on the schedule for Pod C03. Her name was gone, but the system still ran on the calibrations she'd written. She didn't look back. She arrived at 0441. The security pad blinked once, accepted her access code. She pushed the door open with her shoulder, set her tools down near the server racks, and began the checklist. The simulator wing stayed dark for a few minutes longer. Just her and the soft hum of idle systems. She started with the radar modules, rebooted each node, one by one, updated firmware on the secondary weather rendering engine. Reset thermal limits on Pod A06 after noting its fans were pulling 6% above norm. At 05:02, she rolled out the diagnostics cart, plugged in her portable drive, loaded last night's performance logs. She leaned against the console as the data streamed in, arms folded. Most instructors ignored the small jitter and throttle response at high G loads. She didn't. She patched the code. At 05:39, she walked the perimeter of the simulator cluster. The T6 Texan 2 pods were aligned in neat rows, carbon gray shells, each housing a cadet's possible future. She tightened a loose panel on B12, cleaned a sensor port with a Q-tip dipped in isopropyl, ran her finger once along the base of the cockpit glass. Dust meant neglect. Not today. At 05:53, the hangar doors groaned open. Cadets spilled in, voices already rising, laughter, footsteps, energy. They passed her workstation without pause. One stepped on a cable she just unplugged. Didn't look back. She moved aside. One instructor, Captain Rhodes, gave her a short nod. She nodded once in return. At 06:05, she ran a fault scan on the instructor terminal. Found 4 soft errors in the hued sync queue, rebooted it, cleared the cache, logged the results, initials only, timestamp 0607. No one asked. By 06, 19 pods powered on, displays glowed, avionics sequences initialized, students filtered into assigned bays, sim doors sealed. The first scenario of the day, IFR turbulence recovery with limited visibility. Half of them wouldn't hold heading past 90 seconds. She stood in the observation booth. Monitors flickered with flight data altitude, airspeed, control surfaces. Her fingers hovered near the emergency override. Never touched it. At 06:41, a cadet in pod C01 overcompensated pitch during a stall entry. Oscillation set in. The program flagged him as failed. Instructor marked it down. She noted the timing delay in the pitch trim servo emulator. Too small to matter, except it did. At 06:55, she opened the subsystem matrix, located the profile, adjusted the response curve, rebooted it silently. No announcement. The cadet wouldn't know why it felt easier tomorrow. He'd think he was improving. By 07:13, the morning rush had crested. Headsets on, engines virtual, systems live. Talia sat at her desk behind the observation wall, updating firmware on 6 pods simultaneously. She sipped from a plain thermos. Black coffee, no sugar. The wall clock ticked. At 08:24, someone knocked into her chair as they passed. She didn't turn, just rebalanced, adjusted the display angle, resumed typing. Instructors held debriefings across the room. Words like airspeed vector, adverse yaw, systems degradation filled the air. She heard all of it. Didn't write anything down. Cadets came and went. She stayed. At 09:31, one of the external weather injectors failed to load cloud profiles. It had glitched the week before, then reset on its own. This time, it froze. She rebooted the node manually, searched for the log error, found it buried 4 levels deep, corrected a file name reference from uppercase to lowercase, applied the patch. No announcement. At 10:12, Sarah Kim entered the observation booth. Cadet, 2nd year, always on time, by the book. Talia glanced once as she passed, just long enough to register posture, gait, headset positioning. Kim looked at her. A second too long. No words. Talia turned back to her console, opened a new maintenance ticket for pod D04, static in the instructor mic channel. She ran the trace. It was a hardware issue. She logged the part number for replacement. At 11:00, she walked to the storeroom, pulled the part, replaced it herself. At 12:07, a fire drill sounded. Everyone evacuated. Talia paused just long enough to back up the active flight session, walked outside, stood by the side door, didn't mingle. When the all-clear came, she returned first. Boots on tile, doors swinging shut behind her. No one noticed. By 13:23, the instructors broke for lunch. Cadets followed. The bay quieted. Talia moved through the empty simulators, reset the mission logs, recalibrated response curves, repaired 3 UI bugs in the navigation training scenario, reduced load time from 12.4 seconds to 9.3. She didn't log the optimization. At 14:17, she paused outside pod A02. The canopy glass reflected her face. She didn't react to it, just kept walking. By 16:00, she powered down the pods, logged usage metrics, filed the daily summary. No one read it. At 16:27, she exited the hangar. Outside, the wind was shifting, same as every day. The warning klaxon sounded at 10:03. Training Bay 4, Pod B07. Scenario simulated stormfront, low visibility, high crosswind landing. Cadet Marcus Chen was in command. His instructor sat behind, eyes on the display. At 10:04, system logs showed an unexpected elevator trim deflection. The aircraft's virtual nose dropped 6 degrees. Chen overcorrected. Induced oscillation. Roll angle reached 18 degrees right. A second input reversed it. Nose pitched up. Stall warning blared. He froze. At 10:05:17, calm audio recorded breath noise and static. The instructor reached for the override. Too late. At 10:05:23, the spin initiated. -G. HUD flickered. Control input loss. The system's crash detection script activated. Training scenario auto-aborted at 10:05:26. The pod powered down. Cadet Chen emerged pale, shaken. The instructor pulled him aside. By 10:11, investigators were called in. Technical crew followed. Talia joined them without announcement. She wore the same gray jumpsuit, same ID. No one questioned her. You might need me. She moved to the instructor console, logged into the diagnostic terminal. Her hands didn't pause. She called up the crash log, flight recorder data, control inputs, gyro feedback, electrical load traces. At 10:05:09, a small spike appeared in the override subsystem, 16 milliseconds long, then gone. She narrowed the window, zoomed. The spike originated from node 14. Emergency backup, not the instructor's panel. At 10:05:10, the pitch angle stabilized barely, just long enough for the crash script to register recovery criteria. That single moment had prevented a hard shutdown. She marked the timestamp, cross-referenced access logs. No instructor entry. She opened the security protocol layer, located the call signature. Someone had keyed in from Terminal Echo 7, remote access, temporary privileges, logged under system credentials, generic label admin AUX 12. She froze. That terminal was her workstation. Behind her, the team argued over airflow simulation bugs. Someone blamed the storm profile. Others pointed fingers at instructor delay. No one looked at her. She copied the spike data, saved it to a locked partition, closed the file. By 10:38, the technical team shifted to physical inspection. She joined them, helped run a systems check, cleared the flight deck displays, reset power feeds, recalibrated pedal tension. She said nothing. At 10:55, a captain dismissed the tech crew. Investigation would continue after lunch. They'd reconvene with senior staff. She nodded once, returned to her station, sat down, opened a new file, searched the log again. 10:05:10. Her fingers hovered, then began typing. Slow. Deliberate. Note. Override accessed. Unknown source. Investigate anomaly. Initials T.P. Timestamp 11:03. The playback started at 14:06. The tech team clustered around the instructor console. Static crackled through the speakers. Low-frequency hum. Packet distortion. Then a clipped voice cut through. Morgan, taking control. Reduce speed. Maintain wind. Heading 2. The room froze. A pause. Then a faint secondary response flight instrument stabilizing. Another line. Adjust pitch. Do not counter. Wait. Then silence again. Captain Halverson leaned forward. Who the hell is Morgan? No one answered. Sarah Kim was at the edge of the group. She turned slowly, looked across the bay toward Echo 7. Talia was at her desk, typing. Same posture, same gray jumpsuit. Kim stared longer, a flicker of memory, flight gear, a different badge, 3 years old, buried. She said the name out loud, quietly. Talia Morgan. Heads turned. The tech officer replayed the audio, louder this time. Morgan taking control. Talia didn't flinch. She kept typing. Her screen reflected diagnostic logs. Her fingers moved with metronomic calm. Nobody spoke. The air thinned. One of the junior instructors looked toward the corner. She was right there. Had been all morning. All week. All year. The room shifted, not physically, just orientation. Everyone now faced her direction. Talia stopped typing. She didn't speak. At 14:09, the log replay ended. The investigator jotted down a note. Sarah Kim stepped back. Eyes locked. Morgan, she said again. More certain. Talia's eyes met hers. For a moment. Then back to the screen. Not confirmation. Not denial. Just silence. Absolute. Measured. Captain Halverson turned to the team. Pull terminal access records. Trace admin R12. The room broke into movement. Quiet. Focused. But not before every pair of eyes had passed over the woman at Echo 7. No longer invisible. Not quite visible. Just remembered. The sealed room opened at 09:14. Investigator Walsh stood at the center table, surrounded by boxes marked Archive Academy Flight Ops, each label coded, red-taped, time-stamped, one box, older, faded, file FLT 17023. He opened it. Talia watched from the back, still, uninvited. No one asked her to leave. Walsh retrieved the black box recorder first, aged but intact. He handed it to the tech team. They connected the cables, recompiled the data, resynced the audio file header. The playback began at 09:32. Static, then wind noise, faint, then voices. Instructor Williams, breathless. I can't, instrument spinning, I can't see. Then Talia, calm, even. Instructor, release the controls. I have the aircraft. Seconds passed. In the background, alarms, panel beeps, descent rate warnings. Talia again. Pull back your hands. Sir, focus on my voice. Inhale. Hold. Exhale. Good. I have the yoke. No panic. Just cadence. Flight terms. Control measures. Trim. Flap correction. Throttle readjust. At 09:34, Walsh motioned to pause. He pointed to a waveform dip. The technician rewound. Played again. Williams slurred. We're going where I can't. Jesus. He stopped. The silence in the room stretched. Walsh nodded once. Continue. The file ran another 5 minutes. Breathing. Radio chatter. Stabilization calls to regional ATC. Talia issuing commands. Precise. Cold. At 09:41, the recording ended. No one spoke. Walsh signaled. Another folder came out. Me D17023A. Blood tox screen. Sample time stamped 09:58 on incident day. Instructor Captain Jared Williams, BAC 0.14. The legal limit for operating any vehicle 0.08. Walsh laid the sheet on the table. No commentary. A second envelope. Sealed memo. Initialed by 3 officers. Subject personnel action. FLT 17023. The memo recommended non-disciplinary reassignment for Williams. Confidential. Circulation restricted. A third file witness statements. 1 tower controller. 1 ground tech. Both noted irregular comms. Neither included in final report. Sarah Kim leaned forward, glanced toward the corner of the room. Talia didn't move. Walsh picked up a 4th document. A typed summary. Signed by the Director of Flight Training. Prescott acted outside protocol. Failed to follow simulation hierarchy. Emotional instability observed. No reference to flight recovery. No mention of Williams' condition. No ATC logs attached. Walsh laid the last page down, flattened the edges with one hand. At 10:05, he said, "Pull the internal emails from that week. All of them." Talia watched him speak, then looked away. Back to the screen. Back to silence. At 10:21, the next file dropped on the table. Title Agreement of Confidential Personnel Reassignment, signed 3 years prior. One name printed clean across the top. Prescott, Talia R. A second name, in heavier ink Phillips. Director, Academy Command. The clause was precise. Non-disclosure in perpetuity. Violation subject to federal review. The offer transfer to flight systems maintenance. No further contact with aviation operations. She had signed. A dated line. 10:43, 3 days after the flight. Beside the signature, 3 witness initials. All senior staff. Walsh flipped the page. A follow-up memo. Internal use only. We believe Ms. Prescott may become a disruptive presence if allowed to remain in the flight program. Recommend quiet reassignment. Next file email. Thread. Subject FLT 17023. Disposition strategy. From Deputy Deere. Tally to Director Phillips. Date 06/29, 1 day after the incident. Content. We have a problem. If this gets out, we lose funding. Williams is still connected to 4 board members. Options. Phillips replied 4 minutes later. Option. Remove Prescott from visibility. She's good. Too good. Won't stay silent unless we bind her. Walsh paused. Read that again. She's good, Michael. Too good. Won't stay silent unless we bind her. Another line. Lower in the thread. What concerns the board is not the event, it's the perception. Control must be preserved. At 10:37, a new voice joined from the doorway. It was Harrison, now Deputy Director. Then, only a tower observer. I was there, he said. She saved that flight. He didn't look at Talia. He looked at the table, at the emails, at the memo. The investigator held up another page. A performance review from her final week in training. Line 7. Displays technical excellence under pressure. Line 8. Exhibits repeated insubordination. May be difficult to direct in high-risk scenarios. Walsh tapped a line with his pen. The issue wasn't failure. It was obedience. Silence circled the room. Another document. Financials. A $10,000 bonus issued to Captain Williams. 6 weeks after the incident. Coded as retention incentive. No matching record for any other instructor that quarter. Sarah Kim leaned in. Quiet. They buried it. Talia didn't answer. She hadn't moved since 09/14. At 10:49, Walsh spoke again. Pull every communication from the director's office between June 14th and June 30th. I want every line. Nobody objected. Nobody looked away from her, either. She met no eyes. She didn't need to. The hearing ended at 16:42. Finding systemic suppression, deliberate misrepresentation, misconduct by multiple academy officials. The board vote was unanimous. They called her in, seated her at the long table, offered reinstatement with full honors. A public apology. Instructor certification fast-tracked. Retroactive rank and back pay. A financial settlement large enough to erase years. Talia listened. Hands folded. Back straight. She said no to the press conference. No to the interviews. No to the money. She accepted one thing. Her seat. At 05:18 the next morning. She walked into the hangar wearing a regulation flight suit. No markings. No ribbons. No hint of history. Cadets were already moving through pre-flight routines. Instructors glanced her way. One stepped forward to speak. Thought better of it. Stepped back. She passed by pod B02. Her name was listed. Cadet. No distinction. No exceptions. Inside the pod, she adjusted the seat. Checked canopy seals. Ran a full avionics test. Hued sync. Radio frequencies. Response calibration. Stick resistance. Everything was in order. At 06:00 sharp, The instructor entered. Captain Rhodes. He nodded. She nodded back. No words. Scenario loaded. T6 Texan 2. High altitude crosswind hold. Precision timing. Lateral drift monitoring. Complex but not exceptional. She completed the course in silence. No errors. At 07:06 she exited the pod. Cadets were gathered near the observation station, watching, talking in hushed tones. One pointed, another whispered. She ignored it. Returned her helmet to the locker. Logged her flight. Moved to the simulator reset queue. Marcus Chen was waiting outside. Clean uniform. Hands locked behind his back. He saw her and straightened. "Ma'am." She stopped. He looked unsure, then held his ground. "You didn't just save my flight. You showed me what command actually means. The kind that doesn't ask for applause." Talia didn't speak. He stepped aside. She kept walking. Word spread fast. Not rumors. Just awareness. The technician was back, but not as tech. Now. She flew. Some instructors stiffened when she entered rooms. Others offered quiet nods. A few cadets waited for her after training blocks. Asked about chart reading, emergency flows, failure management. She answered, concise, direct, always actionable. At 10:22, she stood by a flight planning table with 3 cadets, reviewing approach patterns over mountainous terrain. Her voice was calm, clipped, no theory, just tactics. One instructor watched from across the room, said nothing. At 12:03, she sat alone in the ready room, reviewing logs, making notes. A folder slid across the table. Evaluation packet. Instructor track invitation. She didn't open it. She slid it back. At 14:45, someone handed her a letter from the Air Education and Training Command. Commendation enclosed. She folded it once, filed it in the bottom of her drawer. No frame. No wall. At 15:11, she walked the training floor again. Pod B07, Marcus's station. She observed his launch sequence, quiet, focused, no errors. At 16:30, she stood outside. Tarmac warm underfoot. A T6 lifted off. She tracked it with her eyes. Not longing, not pride, just observation. Behind her, 2 first-year cadets whispered, "That's her." Right, from the black box. The other nodded. She should be flying for Delta or something by now. She heard them, didn't react. Returned inside. At 17:04, she powered down the weather module, recalibrated the timing sequence, just a reflex. Old habits. Someone left a note near her locker. Typed. Unsigned. "Thank you for staying." We needed to see what quiet courage looks like. She folded it once, placed it behind her ID in the flight bag. Didn't mention it. At 17:21, she walked to the far end of the hangar. No cameras, no ceremony, just readiness, flight, and silence. By 06:12, the hangar lights were up. Talia was already seated at a planning table, reviewing approach patterns over terrain-coded maps, high elevation density, icing altitudes, standard recovery vectors. A cadet stood nearby, first year. Hesitant. She didn't look up. After a moment, the cadet sat. Talia slid the map toward him, pointed to a heading. No preamble. Check wind direction. Check barometric shift. What's your escape vector? He answered. Not wrong. Not right. She adjusted his response with 2 strokes of a pen, then waited. He nodded. She moved on. By 07:03, 3 others had joined. Quiet. Focused. No one talked unless asked. At 08:20, an instructor paused at the edge of the table. Watched. Said nothing. Walked off. That happened more each week. She wasn't on the schedule. She wasn't listed in the teaching rotation. But cadets found her. They started bringing charts, checklists, debrief summaries. She corrected without scolding. Pointed. Never raised a voice. Her questions were surgical, her comments brief. At 09:10, Sarah Kim came by. Didn't stay long, just dropped off a note. Cadet Park wants to quit. Room 114. Talia didn't reply. At 09:17, she walked down the hall, knocked once, entered. Park was seated on the edge of the bunk, eyes red, checklist in hand, shaking. Talia took the list, read it, rewrote 2 items, handed it back, then left. Nothing said. At 10:04, Park was back on the simulator floor. Steady hands. Better trim management. By 12:35, word had spread again. If you're stuck, go to Prescott. She won't talk much, but she'll fix you. At 13:48, a new instructor rotated in from another base. Captain Flores. Walked past her during a flight prep session. Didn't say anything. But later filed a note to command. Informal mentorship observed. Effective. Recommend review for training program integration. It never reached her. At 15:22, she sat with Marcus again. Reviewed crosswind compensation under gust load. No praise. Just corrections. At 16:01, she found a sheet of paper taped to her locker. No envelope. No signature. To the silent guardian. You never stopped flying. You just changed formation. She removed the tape, folded the paper once, slid it into the same inner flap of her flight bag, next to the other. At 17:20, she watched a cadet complete a precision approach under crosswind, nailed the heading, adjusted flaps with perfect sequence. The instructor nodded, quiet. She didn't smile, but she stayed a moment longer than usual. Change wasn't announced. It accumulated. A checklist passed around cadets was now hers, unofficial, handwritten, but followed. Another instructor changed his tone during debriefs. Less shouting. More questions. Maintenance tickets listed faults by correct terminology. Cadets double-checked inputs before complaining. By 18:03, she was alone in the hangar again. Lights dimmed. Pods quiet. She walked to each one, tapped a panel, checked a status light, then sat. Typed one sentence in the maintenance log. Training floor stable. No anomalies. Initials T, P. No one else would see it, but it would hold the line, just like she always had. At 06:04, the ready room was quiet. Talia sat alone, reviewing a sectional chart. Fingers traced route markings, waypoints, elevation contours. She marked a turn near a ridgeline with a pencil, then erased it and redrew it 3 degrees off. A cadet passed behind her, whispered to another. That's her. The one from the black box. She didn't look up. A pair of boots clicked by. Pause, then continued. The name carried now, quietly. No one said it to her face. No one needed to. At 06:27, she zipped her flight suit, gloved up, picked up her helmet. Her checklist was folded into the breast pocket. Pre-flight complete. No need to repeat it. Outside, the ramp glowed faint under early light. Hangar doors rolled open. Rows of trainers shimmered faintly in morning heat. T6 Texan 2, tail number 0928, waited alone at the end. She walked the tarmac, unhurried. Tower cleared her at 06:41. Run-up was smooth, instruments green, oil pressure steady, RPM synced on both props. No anomalies in the MFD. She locked the canopy, checked harness, called out the pre-takeoff brief. There was no co-pilot. Throttle forward, brakes released. The plane rolled. From the tower, an airman leaned closer to the glass. Eyes followed the taxi path. One hand lifted his headset slightly. Is that Morgan? The controller beside him didn't answer, just watched. She turned onto the active at 06:47. Wind calm, sky clear. Departure eastbound. Throttle to full. Engine roared. Rotation came at 72 knots. Nose lifted. Wheels up. She climbed smooth and straight. No sway. No drag. The T6 cut through the sky like a blade too sharp to notice until it passed. She leveled at 4,500 feet, banked left, tracing the route she'd drawn hours earlier. In the ready room, the chart still sat open. Her pencil mark curved toward a high ridge. Wind currents there demanded attention. She'd adjusted early, already compensating. At 07:02, a cadet asked another, "Why doesn't she speak in debrief?" Because she already said everything in flight. Out over the range, the sun caught the canopy. The aircraft tipped slightly, not a signal, just trim. At 07:11, Tower logged her call sign outbound. No remarks. Instructors marked her time block as complete. She didn't return immediately. She flew. When she did, it was without fanfare. Touchdown at 08:07. Nose wheel gentle. Brake pressure even. She taxied off. Logged her data. No words. The log sheet showed no comments. Just numbers. Check marks. Initials. T. P. In the locker room. Her gear went back in place. She unfolded a worn slip of paper. Read it once. Folded it again. Replaced it behind her ID. The note said nothing new, but she kept it like a call sign. At 08:20, she passed two instructors at the end of the corridor. One nodded. The other looked down. She nodded once. The hallway stretched ahead. The sky waited beyond it. That was enough.